The massive human battleship Remembrance shuddered as another void tendril struck its quantum shields. From the command center, General Minjay watched the battle unfold across 3 star systems simultaneously, the tactical display a blur of movements as human and allied forces engaged the enemy. Synthesis Division reports linkage with 94% of allied ships, reported Colonel Yuna, her eyes glowing with the neural connections she maintained. The counter-hive is fully operational. 5 weeks into the war, the combined forces had pushed back the void from its initial conquests. The human strategy, incomprehensible to their allies at first, was working. While conventional warships engaged the visible manifestations of the void, the Synthesis Division had created a psychic barrier that prevented the Krell hive mind from coordinating effectively. The Deltan fleet is in position, Yuna announced. Andromeda containment protocol is ready. Minjay nodded grimly. Execute. Across the battlefield, thousands of ships activated hidden systems. The space between them warped as artificial singularities formed, creating a complex geometric pattern that trapped segments of the void in isolated pockets of space-time. To think, Minjay said quietly to Yuna, 5,000 years ago we could barely deflect their advance. Now we're dissecting them. It wasn't just technology that evolved during our sleep, Yuna replied. It was our understanding. The void is powerful but predictable. Every simulation we ran during hibernation gave us insight into their patterns. On the tactical display, the trapped void segments were being systematically neutralized. Allied casualties were minimal, a stark contrast to the devastating losses humanity had suffered in the ancient war. A communication alert flashed, and Admiral Yunji's hologram appeared. General, the Confederation Council is requesting your presence. The Void's main consciousness has sent an envoy. They're offering terms. Minjay's eyes widened in surprise. The Void has never negotiated before. They've never faced extinction before, Yunji responded. Our ancestors would be proud. They didn't just preserve humanity. They transformed us into something the Void fears. As the general prepared to depart for the council meeting, a junior officer approached with a data tablet. Sir, we've decoded more of the ancient hibernation protocols. There's something you should see. Minjay scanned the document, his expression hardening. Is this verified? Yes, sir. Multiple sources. The information was clear. Operation Sleeping Giant had never been merely about survival or eventual victory. It was about evolution. The hibernation process had subtly altered human physiology over 5 millennia, optimizing neural pathways and enhancing latent abilities. The humans who had awakened were no longer the same species that had gone to sleep. Shall I inform Admiral Yunji? The officer asked. Minji considered the implications. The war was turning in their favor, but the document suggested this was only the beginning of humanity's new role in the galaxy. No, he decided. Let's focus on winning this war first. There will be time for humanity to understand what we've become afterward. As Minjay departed for the council chambers, the document's final passage remained fixed in his thoughts. When humanity awakens, it will not be as the species that slept, but as the guardian the galaxy requires. The beast is not humanity itself, but the potential we have carried within us dormant until needed, waiting for the moment when the universe called for its awakening. Doyen stood on the observation deck of the Confederation diplomatic ship, Harmony. His hands gripped the metal railing tightly as he stared out the large window. What he saw made his mouth drop open. A massive human ship was coming out of a hidden dock built inside Charon, the moon of Pluto. The ship was huge, bigger than any Confederation vessel Doyen had ever seen. Its dark metal hull was covered with weapons that glowed with blue energy. The name Vengeance of Terra was painted in large white letters on its side. Amazing, isn't it? Said a voice behind him. Doyen turned to see Hyejin, the human woman who had been assigned as a guide to the Confederation visitors. She wore a simple gray uniform with the blue and green Earth symbol on her shoulder. How is this possible? Doyen asked, turning back to look at the giant ship. How could you build something this big in secret? Hyejin walked up to stand beside him at the railing. We didn't build it while we slept, she explained. We built the automated shipyard 5,000 years ago. Then the machines worked on their own, building and improving the design year after year while we slept. Doyen tried to understand what he was seeing. As the youngest son in his family, he hadn't expected to become a diplomat. His older brothers were supposed to take those roles. But when they died in an accident 3 years ago, Doyen had to step up. Now, at only 26 years old, he was part of the most important diplomatic mission in Confederation history. Their council is falling apart, he said, still looking at the giant ship. The Krell representatives are threatening to leave the Confederation completely. Hyejin smiled, but there was no happiness in it. The Krell know exactly what's coming, she said in a quiet voice. They've always known. What does that mean? Doyen asked, turning to face her. Hyejin's eyes were hard when she answered. The Void isn't some mysterious space monster, young diplomat. It's the true form of the Krell. The words hit Doyen like a physical blow. He stepped back, shaking his head. The Krell had helped form the Confederation 3,000 years ago. They were respected across the galaxy as peacekeepers and wise teachers. They looked like tall insects, with 4 arms and large eyes. Nothing about them seemed evil or dangerous. That's impossible, Doyen whispered. What you know as the Krell are just bodies. Puppets, Hyejin explained, her voice steady. The real Krell is a hive mind that eats entire civilizations. 5,000 years ago, they almost succeeded in eating humanity. We had to destroy 3 of our own star systems just to push them back long enough to put our last plan into action. But everyone trusts the Krell, Doyen said, his mind racing. They're on every important council. They advise on all major decisions. Exactly, Hyejin said with a grim nod. When we went to sleep, we knew they would work their way into whatever galactic government formed after us. We knew they would make themselves seem like helpful friends. And we knew exactly when they would be ready to eat the galaxy again. A loud alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. What's happening? Doyen asked, suddenly afraid. Hyejin touched a small device on her wrist. Her face grew serious as she read something on its screen. It's starting, she said. Come with me. You need to see this. They ran to the ship's main control room. Many screens showed different parts of Confederation space. On one screen, Doyen saw a Krell representative in a meeting room. Suddenly, the Krell's body seemed to melt, turning into a dark, smoke-like substance that rose up to the ceiling. What's happening to them? Doyen asked, horrified. They're changing to their true form, Hyejin said, pointing to other screens showing the same thing happening on different worlds. The Void is done pretending. Another screen showed something even more terrifying. On a Confederation colony world, thousands of Krell were gathered in a large plaza. All at once they began to change, their bodies dissolving into the same dark substance. The darkness grew, covering buildings and people. Where it touched, things simply disappeared. They're eating the planet, Doyen whispered. This is how it began last time, Hyejin said sadly. The Void grows by consuming matter and energy. Planets, stars, people, everything becomes food for them. The door to the control room slid open, and a tall human man in a uniform with many badges walked in. Everyone in the room stood straighter. Admiral Jinho, Hyejin said with a quick bow. This is Doyen, the Confederation representative. The Admiral nodded to Doyen, then turned to the main screen. Status report, he ordered. A human officer at one of the control stations spoke up. Void emergence confirmed in 27 systems, sir. The pattern matches our predictions exactly. They're starting with the outer colonies, just like before. Are all our ships ready? The Admiral asked. Yes, sir. The entire fleet is awake and armed. Defense systems are at full power. Admiral Jinho turned back to Doyen. Your Confederation is under attack, young man. But we've been preparing for this day for 5 millennia. Our ships are already moving to protect the core worlds. Doyen felt lost. Everything he had believed about the galaxy was falling apart. Why would the Void, reveal themselves now? They've been part of the Confederation for thousands of years. Why not just keep pretending? Because they knew we were waking up, Hyejin explained. Once we started to emerge from hibernation, they realized their cover was blown. Now they're rushing their plans, trying to consume as much as they can before we can organize a defense. Admiral Jinho gestured to another screen showing hundreds of large human ships moving into formation. Luckily, rushing makes them vulnerable. Their strength comes from careful planning over centuries. We've forced them to act before they were fully ready. But how can you fight something like that? Doyen asked, pointing at the screen showing the dissolving Krell. They're not solid, they're like smoke or shadows. 5,000 years ago we couldn't fight them effectively, Admiral Jinho said. That's why we retreated. But our research continued while we slept. He pressed a button and a new image appeared on the main screen. It showed human soldiers wearing special armor that glowed with the same blue energy as the weapons on the ships. This is our void containment technology, the Admiral explained. It creates energy fields that can trap and neutralize void matter. We couldn't have developed it while the void was watching us. That's why the hibernation was necessary. Hyejin put a hand on Doyen's shoulder. The Confederation needs to know the truth, she said gently. Every species needs to decide which side they're on. Those who stand with humanity will be protected. Those who side with the void will share its fate. A communication officer called out from her station. Admiral, we're receiving reports from all Confederation sectors. The Krell High Council has declared humanity to be enemies of the galaxy. They're calling for our immediate destruction. Admiral Jinho laughed without humor. Of course they are. They know we're the only ones who can stop them. He turned to Doyen. Go back to your people, tell them what you've seen here. Tell them humanity has returned not to conquer, but to save the galaxy from the enemy that has been living among you for thousands of years. Doyen swallowed hard, then nodded. I will. But will they believe me? Show them this, Hyejin said, handing him a small device. It contains all our historical records of the First Void War and our sensor readings of the current transformations. The evidence is clear. As Doyen prepared to return to his ship, a final alarm sounded. On the main screen, a new image appeared. A Confederation defense station was under attack. But not by the Void, by other Confederation ships. They're fighting each other, Doyen gasped. The Void has infiltrated more than just the Krell bodies, Admiral Jinho said grimly. They've taken over key positions throughout the Confederation. Some ships and stations are already under their control. He turned to face his officers. This is it. The war has begun again. Signal all human ships to deploy. Operation Sleeping Giant is now in full effect. As the control room burst into activity, Hyejin led Doyen toward the shuttle bay. Tomorrow, she said, her eyes meeting his with a gaze that had seen civilizations fall. Humanity goes to war again, and this time, we will not retreat. Jihoon had never seen the Grand Confederation assembly at full capacity. Representatives from 800 species filled the massive chamber, their voices a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion. As aide to the Korean Enclave's senior ambassador, he had a front-row seat to what might be the most consequential gathering in galactic history. The evidence provided by the awakened humans had been irrefutable. Historical records, biological samples, and the very transformation of the Krell themselves had confirmed humanity's warnings. The Void, the true Krell consciousness, had begun consuming outer colony worlds, just as humanity had predicted. Admiral Yoonji of the newly reformed Human Defense Force stepped up to the central podium. Unlike most military leaders Jihoon had encountered, she wore no medals or decorations on her simple gray uniform. The only symbol was a blue and green circle that Jihoon recognized as the ancient Earth. Distinguished representatives, Admiral Yoonji began, her voice carrying throughout the chamber without technological amplification. 5 millennia ago, my people made a choice. We could have abandoned this galaxy to its fate. Instead, we chose to sleep, to wait, and to prepare. Displays activated around the chamber, showing the massive human fleet now positioned at strategic points throughout Confederation space. Ships of impossible size and configuration, built by automated factories over thousands of years. We do not ask for your territory. We do not seek to rule. We ask only for alliance against an enemy that will consume us all without distinction or mercy. A Deltan representative rose, their crystalline form shimmering with agitation. How can we trust you? You deceived the galaxy with your false extinction? Admiral Yunji nodded solemnly. We kept our existence secret because the Krell can only be defeated through absolute surprise. Their hive mind can anticipate conventional strategies centuries in advance. Our deception was necessary, not just for our survival, but for yours. The assembly erupted again but fell silent when the main doors opened. A procession of figures entered, humans but different. Their skin bore luminescent patterns, and their movements were unnaturally fluid. May I present the Synthesis Division, Admiral Yunji announced. Volunteers who underwent genetic modification before hibernation. For 5,000 years, they have been evolving one purpose: to establish a counter-hive that can interface directly with the void. Jihoon watched in awe as one of the modified humans approached a terrified Confederation security officer. Their hands touched, and the officer gasped as a brief connection formed. They can link minds with any species, the Admiral explained. In battle, this will allow unprecedented coordination. But more importantly, they can temporarily link your consciousness with mine, with any humans. You can see our memories, feel our intentions. You will know we speak the truth. One by one, representatives stepped forward, experiencing the direct neural connection. Jihoon saw their expressions transform from suspicion to understanding, and often to shame at having doubted. By day's end, the vote was nearly unanimous. The Galactic Confederation and the returned human forces would stand together against the void. The wind howled across the frozen wasteland of Antarctica. Snow swirled around the large dome structures that housed the excavation team. Inside the main dome, Taeyong stared at his screen with worry in his eyes. This was his third check of the air readings. Something was not right. These numbers make no sense, he muttered to himself, tapping the side of the monitor. The facility they were digging up was old. Very old. 5,000 years old, to be exact. It was buried deep under the ice and was supposed to be dead. No power, no life, just an empty shell from the time when humans lived on Earth. The records called it Sanctuary Omega, the last place where humans stayed before they vanished from history. Taeyong looked up from his screen and called across the room. Jiwoo, please come see this. The power readings are going up again. Jiwoo pushed her chair away from her own workstation and walked over. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail and her face showed doubt as she looked at his screen. That can't be right, she said with a frown. Nothing could still be working down there. Not after all this time. They were both from the same place, descendants of Korean people who had left Earth long ago and settled in the Rigel star system. Now they worked as diggers of the past, xenoarchaeologists they were called, for the Galactic Confederation. Their job was to find out what had happened to the humans who once lived on Earth. It was just history work. Most people in the galaxy thought of humans as a small, unimportant species that had reached the stars briefly before disappearing. Did you run the test program? Jiwoo asked, pointing at a button on the screen. Twice, Taeyong said. The equipment is working fine. Something down there is using power. Jiwoo pulled out her message pad and scrolled through it with a worried look. This is bad timing. The boss wants us to stop digging. She looked up at Taeyong. The Krell are complaining again about us working in forbidden zones. Taeyong rolled his eyes. The Krell couldn't even travel in space when humans disappeared. What do they know about Earth? The Krell were bug-like aliens who had a lot of power in the Galactic Confederation. They always seemed nervous about any work involving old human sites. They called such places dangerous and forbidden, but never explained why. Taeyong was about to say more when a deep rumbling sound came from below. The floor shook. Small bits of ice fell from the ceiling of their shelter. Beep, beep, beep. All the alarms in the room started to sound at once. The shaking got worse. "Where's it coming from?" shouted Han, another team member, as he grabbed onto a table to stay standing. Jiwoo checked her scanner. Level 7, the big sealed room. Level 7 was the deepest part of their dig. They had found massive metal doors there a week ago. The doors had warning signs in many old Earth languages. The team had been trying to figure out how to open them safely. "Everyone to the main shaft," Taeyong ordered. "Now!" The team of 8 people ran to the large hole they had dug into the ice. Metal stairs wound down into the darkness. They climbed down quickly, following the emergency lights. When they reached level 7, they found something impossible. The giant doors they couldn't open with all their advanced tools, were sliding apart by themselves. "It's opening from the inside," whispered Sue, the team's engineer. "How is that possible?" White steam poured out from the opening. It hissed as it met the cold air. The ancient door mechanisms, somehow still working after 50 centuries, moved smoothly. The team stepped back, unsure what to expect. From the darkness beyond the doors, a shape appeared. A human shape. Then another, and another. Taeyong blinked several times, not believing his eyes. Humans were walking out of the sealed room. Not skeletons, not mummies. Living, breathing humans. Hundreds of them. They wore strange suits that seemed to glow with power. Their eyes were alert and focused. They moved with purpose like soldiers. "Impossible," Jiwoo whispered beside him. "No one could survive for 5,000 years. The first human to exit the chamber was a woman. She had sharp features and short hair. She walked straight to Taeyong, who stood frozen in shock. She looked at the Confederation symbol on his suit and spoke. The language was old, and Taeyong's translator device took a moment to understand it. 5,000 years, the woman finally said in a voice that was calm, but with eyes that burned with intensity. Taeyong stepped back without meaning to. "Right, on schedule." Who are you?" Taeyong managed to ask. "Commander CO of the Earth Defense Force," she replied. "And you are standing in a military installation." More humans were exiting the chamber now. Some carried strange weapons. Others pushed large containers on wheels. All moved with the same calm efficiency. "I don't understand," Jiwoo said, finding her voice. "The records say humans left the solar system. They say your species nearly died. Out." Commander CO's mouth formed a thin smile. "The records say what we wanted them to say." One of the other humans approached Commander CO and spoke quietly to her. She nodded and turned back to the excavation team. "Your Confederation, is the Krell still part of it?" Taeyong nodded slowly. "They are founding members. Why?" Something dark passed across Commander Seo's face. She turned to her people and gave a sharp hand signal. Immediately they moved with greater urgency, unpacking equipment and setting up what looked like communication devices. "You need to contact your leaders," Commander Seo told Taeyong. "Tell them that Operation Sleeping Giant is now active. Tell them that the humans have awakened." "I don't understand," Taeyong said. "What is Operation Sleeping Giant? Why were you down here all this time?" Commander Seo looked at him with eyes that had seen things no one in the current galaxy could imagine. "Because some enemies cannot be defeated in a single lifetime," she said. "And because humanity does not surrender. We wait. We plan. We prepare." She looked at the rest of her people, now fully awake after 5,000 years of sleep. "And now," she said in a voice that sent a chill down Taeyong's spine, "we fight back." Sungho sat at his large desk, his hands shaking as he read the report again. As the chief diplomat of the Galactic Confederation's 8th sector, he had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. "This can't be true," he said, looking up at Minya, who stood on the other side of his desk. Minya was his best intelligence officer. She always found the truth. "I checked everything 3 times, sir," Minya said with a serious face. "The humans never disappeared. They hid. And now they are waking up all across the galaxy." The news had spread fast, causing fear everywhere in Confederation space. Just 3 days after the Antarctica facility opened, other hidden places started to wake up too. There were human bases on Mars and Europa, and in the asteroid belts where humans used to live. Each place had thousands of sleeping humans, kept alive by technology that no one thought was possible. Sungho's office was high in the Confederation Tower on New Sol, a colony planet. Through the large window behind him, the city's tall buildings shone in the light of two suns. "The Krell want an emergency meeting of the council," Sungho said, rubbing his head where it hurt. "They're completely scared." The Krell were the oldest members of the Confederation. They looked like tall, thin insects that walked on two legs. They were known for being calm and wise, but now they were acting afraid. "They have good reason to be scared," Mina said. She touched a button on her wrist device. A large clear image appeared in the air between them. "We have unlocked some of the history files from the Antarctica base. The humans call their plan Operation Sleeping Giant. Look at this." The image showed scenes from long ago. Huge space, battles with ships firing at each other, planets on fire, billions of humans getting onto enormous ships. "We always thought humans left in a hurry because their homeworld was dying," Minha said, pointing to the images. "But that's not true. This wasn't them running away. It was a planned retreat. These records show that humans fought a war against something they called the Void. They couldn't win the fight, but they wouldn't give up either. So they made a plan so big it's hard to believe." Sungho watched as the recording showed countless humans walking into small rooms with beds. The doors closed and ice formed on the small windows. "They left machines behind to watch for when this void would return," Minha explained. "The plan was very exact. 5,000 years of sleep while their enemies thought they were all dead. During that time, their secret research bases would keep working, making new weapons and technology where no one could see. And now they're all waking up," Sungho said quietly. "Every single one of them. But why now? Why this exact time?" Minha looked worried. "That's what scares me the most, sir. The timing is too perfect, as if they knew exactly when they would be needed again." A loud beep came from Sungho's desk. A message was coming in. He touched the screen to read it. His face went pale. "What is it?" Minha asked. Sungho turned the screen so she could see the message. It was short, but terrifying. "The Void has returned. Humanity stands ready. The galaxy will need to choose sides. Call the emergency team," Sungho said, standing up quickly. "And get me a direct line to the High Council. They need to see this now." 2 hours later, Sungho stood in the Confederation's emergency meeting room. The walls were covered with screens, showing reports from all over the galaxy. Representatives from 12 key species were seated around the large round table. Many more joined through video links. "The reports are still coming in," Sungho said to the room. "Human facilities are activating on 37 worlds so far. The pattern suggests there are hundreds more we haven't found yet." A Krell representative named Zath stood up. His insect-like body was shaking visibly. "This is a violation of Confederation law. These hidden bases were never declared when we welcomed human survivors into our alliance." "Survivors?" Mina said from her seat next to Sungho. "That's the point, Zath. There were never just survivors. Most of humanity went into hiding on purpose." Another screen lit up on the wall. It showed a direct video link from the Antarctica base on Earth. Commander Seo's face appeared, now cleaned, up and wearing a formal uniform with no markings except a small blue and green circle, the old Earth symbol. "Greetings, Confederation representatives," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. "I understand you have questions. I am here to provide answers." The room went silent. 5,000 years ago, humanity faced an enemy that could not be defeated by conventional means, Commander Seo continued. This enemy consumed entire planets. It could not be reasoned with. It could not be stopped. We called it the Void. She pressed something off screen, and the large display behind her showed dark, shadowy shapes moving through space, engulfing ships and small moons. "We fought for decades," she said. "We lost billions of people. We had to destroy our own colonies to slow the Void's advance. Finally, we realized we could not win, not then. So we created Operation Sleeping Giant. The screens around the room showed more images. Huge underground facilities being built, massive ships carrying people to hidden locations, and row after row of sleep chambers being filled. The plan had 3 parts, Commander Seo explained. First, most of humanity would enter hibernation in hidden facilities across the galaxy. Second, we would leave behind automated research stations that would develop new technologies while we slept. Third, we would create a monitoring network that would wake us when the void returned. Zath, the Krell representative, was now shaking, so badly that another representative had to help him sit down. "And you believe this void has returned now?" Sung-Ho asked. Commander Seo's face became even more serious. "We don't believe. We know. Our sensors detected its energy signature 3 days ago, moving toward Confederation space from the galactic rim." "Why should we believe you?" asked a representative from the Morrigan species, a race of tall, four-armed beings. "This could be a trick to take control of the Confederation." Commander Seo looked directly at the Krell representative. "Ask the Krell," she said simply. "They know exactly what the void is. Don't you, Zath?" All eyes in the room turned to the Krell representative, who had gone completely still. "What does she mean, Zath?" Sung-Ho asked. Zath slowly stood up. His insect eyes looked around the room. Then, his voice changed. It became deeper, almost like 2 voices speaking at once. "The humans should have stayed asleep," Zath said in the strange new voice. "Now everyone will suffer." A dark, smoky substance began to seep from Zath's eyes and mouth. The other representatives jumped back in horror. "Stop him!" "Commander Seo," shouted from the screen. "That's not a Krell anymore, it's a void infiltrator." Security guards rushed forward, but it was too late. The dark substance completely covered Zath's body. Then it shot toward the ceiling and disappeared into the air system. Alarms began to sound throughout the building. "This is why we hid, Commander," Seo said as chaos broke out in the meeting room. "This is why we waited. The void doesn't just destroy worlds, it takes over bodies. It infiltrates governments. The Krell are not what you think they are." Sung-Ho stared at the screen, his world, falling apart around him. "What are they then?" he managed to ask. Commander Seo's answer chilled him to the bone. "They are not the Krell. The real Krell were consumed long ago. What you know as Krell are just puppets, bodies controlled by the void, and they've been using your Confederation to prepare the galaxy for consumption."